In honor of Glacies going viral and being now my most popular video, I have decided to not make just a short explaining about them, but I've decided to make a full video, or at least longer than a minute, telling a couple stories about how I got Onyx, how I got Glacies, how they interacted, and their deaths. So I got Onyx. He was 5 years old, so that would have been 2010. And I was living with my grandfather at the time, who wasn't a big fan of cats at first, but really got attached to him. And actually, Onyx became more of his cat. The biggest thing that happened that I disagree with and my grandfather lied to me about, even though he was 5 years old, he somehow got a vet to basically declaw him, which is, again, horrible. And I was very upset. But he didn't know what else to do because I wouldn't get rid of the cat. And he was tearing up furniture. And I know people say if you don't want a cat, if you don't want your furniture to be torn up, you don't get a cat. But he, again, I was forcing him to keep it, or him, and that happened. So that was one of the first big upsets that happened. Well, honestly, the biggest upset that happened with Onyx. And so I had him from 2010 until in 2016. So 6 years after I've had him, I got Glacies. And at that time, I was living with my brother in another grandparent's house. They were passed away, but we were still living there. And I got Glacies. So Onyx, who again still didn't have claws, would go around the house, and he did like bop Glacies on the nose, but Glacies wasn't aggressive to cats. That's actually one reason I got her is because on her kennel it said friendly with cats, and I needed a dog at the time that was friendly with cats. So I got Glacies. I've already talked about in other videos how I got her, so you have to check it out. But in 2020, that would be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 4 years after I got Glacies, Onyx basically got a growth in his head, and it turned out to be cancer, and I had to put him down during the pandemic. And we used the service that comes to your house, and you can only do that if you have time to schedule. And Onyx was still being able to walk around and all that, but the doctor said because of the size of the growth, it probably is giving him a migraine constantly. And I didn't want to put him down, but I felt that was the best thing to do, and that was very emotional. Everyone cried, and Glacies was there, so I let Glacies smell Onyx's body. And then we got him cremated. And then 2 years later, 6 years after I get Glacies, Onyx I had for 10 years. The cats live longer. And so I had Glacies for 6 years, and it was 2,250 days. And I could probably even figure out the hour, because as long as I figure out when I went to adopt her, which is probably written in my calendar, I could figure out when she died. And then even though there were days that I was at like a monastery doing a retreat, and obviously at that time I didn't have her trained as a service animal. This was shortly after getting her, and I couldn't take her there. Honestly, being a private place, because church and state separation, they technically could deny me, I believe, because it's only public access, but I don't know. Anyways, so other than that, I was around her every single day, most of the day, and she, every single night when she was there, she would sleep with me, and I didn't like sometimes my mom would have to take her to the vet because it was a very early morning appointment, and I'm not able to wake up early morning without getting sick. So basically she would spend the night over there, and that was very troubling. But yeah, that's honestly what I missed the most about Glacies was nighttime, and at least Samson is willing to get in the bed with me. He has to wear his backpack because in the morning I take my medicine, and like he has his backpack off now because I don't take my medicine again until the evening. But if we left and went somewhere, he'd put his backpack on. And honestly, now I got him a collar that I need to start using, but I'm only going to use it either in the backyard while training or just in daily life outside the house. But other than that, I'm coping and I'm healing, but there are days that I really miss Glacies, or even hours. Like, I woke up, I was fine for an hour, and then all of a sudden I just got sad again. And I'm still sad, but me talking about it and posting about it helps. And then my favorite memory with Onyx that I miss is how he would greet me at the door, and then also how he would paw me for pets, which I like that Samson does the same thing. One, because that can be turned into a task. That's if he pawed me or did stuff like that to get my attention during interruption or for medicine reminder, especially waking up, that would be good. I will say, probably once the training gets more serious and he gets hooked on, I should probably not let him sleep in my bed, just because he needs to get used to his own bed. Because if I start dating someone who sleeps over, he can't be in bed because he's the size of like a normal human, and 3 people couldn't fit in my bed. And he's just difficult. Like, he'll stand up in the middle of the night, and then like I won't be able to move the covers because of how heavy he is, and so I have to try to push him out of the way. But again, he's a very strong dog, so when I first got him, I wanted to see how strong he was, so I had him come up. At least in the beginning, he would come up in my face when I was petting Glacies, and I started trying to push him away, like holding his chest, like his shoulder, so it wouldn't hurt him, but push him away as strong as I could, and I promise you, he got no more than 2 feet, maybe a foot back. That's how strong he is. So at that point, I realized if he wasn't a good boy and he wasn't so tame and trained, he could be very dangerous. But I will also say, since Glacie passed, I've wanted to keep her alive with Samson, so I've decided when I praise him, instead of saying good boy or good Samson, I just say Glacies in a very excited voice. And I noticed today, this morning, I actually said good boy by accident a couple times, and he wagged his tail. But then I remembered and switched, and I said Glacies in a very like moderate, high-pitched voice. And he wagged his tail and stood up, and so that to me shows that saying her name, he knows who Glacies is. I think he knows that she's not coming back, but I want him to feel good and feel happy and feel playful like he did with her when I start praising him with her name. So that's just how I like to remember her on a daily basis, is just praising him with her name. And I'm sure, hopefully in 10 years or more, when Samson passes away, I'll probably still use Glacies' name with the new dog, because I always try to get a new dog near the end of, like, for instance, I wanted a new dog because I thought if Glacies ever dies, I would like my new dog to meet Glacies so they can kind of pass on. And I didn't know how quickly Glacies was going to die. I didn't know. And honestly, the story with that is I was supposed to go to New Jersey, and I was talking about getting a dog last year in like September, and I finally got serious about it, and my mom said you should wait until June because we're going to New Jersey for a family get-together. And long story short, one of the cousins got upset with me, and I didn't feel comfortable going anymore. So I didn't go, and instead I got Samson. And I'm so blessed and glad that that cousin got upset with me for no reason, because if she didn't and I went, I promise you I wouldn't have gotten Samson, and I probably wouldn't have gotten a dog before she died, because it was only a month after I would have gotten home, or less than a month. So again, I don't think I would have been so on the move to get a dog, oblivious of her impending death. But thankfully my cousin, who's a drama queen, got upset, made me feel uncomfortable coming, and in retaliation, kind of rebellion against my parents still going, I went out before they left and got Samson. And my parents at first thought he was too big and that could be dangerous, but after getting to know him and seeing his behavior, we all love him. And again, I'm just grateful and glad that Glacies got to meet Samson. And I'm grateful and glad that Samson could help me lay Glacies to rest. He watched the whole funeral. He was up on the hill a little bit, not far, watching the whole funeral with Rumor. When we laid her body in, he came down and sniffed her. And then he went back up and watched the funeral. And then when we put the dirt on and then put the rocks on, because it was a natural native burial. She was just buried in a bed sheet that matched the bed sheet that she had her seizure in, which was the bed sheet that she last slept in. And she had a bunch of flowers. I made a video about this too. I covered her just like they covered Christ's body in perfumed oil. I covered her in blessed olive oil and blessed essential oils and holy salt and holy water and cathedral dirt and all sorts of stuff. I did it every sacramental except for a palm. Sadly, I forgot, but I will still probably put a palm under the stone when I get there. And my plan is every time I come to Tranquil Meadows, that I then get stones, or at least one stone. I would like in the beginning to fill the mule up, which is this car thing, up with a whole bunch of heavy stones at least once. And then when the weather gets better, I'll probably do it more often. But once it gets a good pile, then I'll try to, every time I come there, or every time I go past her grave, to get a stone from somewhere and lay it on her grave. So that's our first pet cemetery. This is going to be a longer video because I'm going to talk about that. We buried her about 5 feet from where you enter our personal cave. It's about a 1,000 square foot cave, and my parents want to be cremated. My dad and mom want to be put in glass globes, and if that happens, I'm going to get cedar boxes I'm going to wrap the glass globes and stuff it all with cotton, linen, and silk. And then I'll nail the box shut, and then encase that box and weld it in some strong, non-degradable metal, and then have someone or myself dig a hole in the cave and bury that metal box in. And basically I'd dig a hole, put some cement in about halfway up the box, put the box in, let it dry, and then at that point I'd probably put some sacramentals, like some Benedictine medals or stuff, in the cement, and then pour it on. And then we would get a headstone, not an upright headstone, but one of those flat ones that are about like 6 inches tall, 8 inches tall, something like that. And it would just have his name or my parents' name, birth and death date, and then anything else they want to include. I would also, on the metal box, I would want to engrave it, even though it's concrete and hopefully no one ever disturbs it. If in 100 or 200 years people destroy the grave, I would hope they would at least realize that this box contains the remains of a human. So, and the idea of that is the cave entrance. Once you enter the cave, if you turn the corner on the right, there's this little cove that has a little sun entrance outlet thing that we're eventually going to put cast iron bars on, but big enough where animals can get in. Some animals, like bats, but small enough that larger animals that could get stuck down there, because we're going to bar off that area too. And that's the thing, is we're going to bar off the hole. And then my dad wants to install cast iron gates that have a lock, and we'll always have that lock on there. And then if, God forbid, we ever have to sell the estate, what I hope happens is when my parents pass away, it'll become me and my brothers, and I'll continue to live there until I die, or until I die, and then I would want to just, if I'm dead, I'd want to just give it to my brother to give to one of his offspring who would not sell it. I would definitely want to write a contract that, because basically there is a contract with a neighbor that says the person who lives there now, the grandson of the person who gave it to him, wrote in the will that he can never sell it, that he has to give it to his niece and nephew, who they are going to sell it, which kind of sucks because it's going to be thrown out of the family. But I would hope that by then we would make multiple houses and cabins on the property so that it would be either expensive to sell or we would keep it in the family, because I would love for it to be passed down at least a few generations. And the whole thing is, when me and I'm sure whoever is putting this in the will, I would want them to say, if it ever leaves the family, you have to you have to find a welder to weld the iron door shut so no one could get in or out, put welding metal in the hole of the key lock. I would also want to actually add more bars to it so it's like a cage. That way larger animals can get in and out, but humans can't. And with that said, I would just want to really, I don't know what I would want to do. If I wanted to be too crazy, I would actually just fill that cove up with cement. So, because we would be dead for so long that it doesn't matter and no one's going to know us, so at least our burial remains are going to be forever in this cave, because it'd be a whole hell of a lot of money unless they blew it up, which I wouldn't think anyone would blow up a cave. But it'd be a whole hell of a lot of money to get rid of all that concrete. So it's all up in the air. All we know is that my parents want to be buried there. My uncle's going to be buried there. I'm probably going to be buried there. All of us are going to be cremated and put in the ground or the wall. I would preferably be put in the wall, where they just put me in a metal container that doesn't rust, drill a hole in the wall, and then put it with cement or something with the thing in it, and then put a metal or copper plaque saying what's in there. But with that said, I want to say thank you for giving me all the views. I'm so happy that Glacies went viral, and I look forward to one day in the far future I will be forever laid to rest near my beloved dog. And honestly, we're going to probably bury all of our animals there. Either get them cremated and entomb them there, or just put the whole body. Like, Samson is so big, I might have to cremate him, because he wouldn't fit in a cooler like Glacies did, and it'd be really hard to keep him cold on dry ice until we were able to bury him. For instance, Glacies died on a Sunday, and I guess it's a dog funeral home, kept her on ice until Friday, and then my dad and I put her in, actually my dad put her in the cooler with dry ice, and then basically the dry ice really froze her, so there was no decay or anything like that. She was more frozen than what the cremated people had her at. But that's basically 8 days that she was dead. And again, we could probably have the cremation people hold Samson's body, but how would we get it from Louisville 2 hours south to the property? Like, that would be very difficult. And we definitely couldn't pick him up Friday and go down Sunday. We had to pick him up Friday, put him on dry ice. Probably, like, I would think the only way to do that is to get dry ice and cover a baby pool in dry ice, and then put more dry ice on top of him, and then go down that day and dig a hole. But if that's the case, my dad needs to get his digger ready, because I'm sure Marcus won't be willing to go down and dig the hole like he did for Glacies in 10 years with Samson. But I don't know. Regardless, Samson is going to be buried there, preferably near Glacies. I would like to at least keep the section next to her open for him. And then I would honestly like to do, I have Onyx's cremated remains, and I would like to take all the hair and memorabilia out of there, but I would really like to bury the bag of ashes in, like, I'd be willing to use a flask and seal that up, and then bury the flask in like a cigar box, like a wooden cigar box, and dig a hole and lay him in there, and then fill up or put rock on top. It'd just be a lot smaller than what Glacies put. I mean, it would be a lot smaller than what Glacies was put in. But yeah, we have a pet cemetery now. We have a future cave cemetery. We are probably going to build or buy a shed that will be transformed into the family chapel. We'll tile the walls and floors and ceilings, and have metal countertops that have chains from the ceiling with hooks that you can put lanterns on and have candles burning. So if I do a prayer ritual for someone in need, and I light a candle and say prayers over the flame and then put oil and all that other stuff there, I could then put it in this lantern hanging from the ceiling in a building that's lined with anti-flammable material, so that if it ever did if the candle broke, the metal and glass lantern should first of all keep them, the lantern should keep the flame in, but if for some reason the flame dropped out, possibly falling would put it out, but otherwise it would hit a tile floor that it would just make burn marks in, but again, it wouldn't burn, because not only would we tile it and line it with metal sheets on the top and all this other stuff, I would also want to paint the wood with some non-flammable material just in case, because my plan is to always have at least one candle burning, and I would want to say a prayer over that candle to guide the way for spirits in the cave and by the cave to enter into the light, and always have a light to guide their way or something like that. Anyways, I just want to say thank you for viewing, and thank you for the support. I love you, Glacies, always and forever.